Good morning, everyone. Your morning weather briefing for this July 17th finds that there are no major changes in the forecast versus what I presented yesterday. Temperature and rainfall outlooks this morning, still a distinct lack of big heat in the forecast for the entire 2 week time frame for all of the Corn Belt region. Any big heat during the next 2 weeks clearly going to be in southern portion of Oklahoma and a big portion of Texas, where I think that the heat there could eventually become a national news media story as far as the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day rainfall forecast is concerned. A good model agreement on below normal rainfall for the 6 to 10 day period should be seeing some sort of an uptick in rainfall again for the 11 to 15 day time frame, although as usual, confidence in that 11 to 15 day rainfall forecast pretty low this morning. QPF discussion for the 1 to 5 day time frame. I think that this forecast is too wet for a lot of the Corn Belt. You can see that this map is going for an awfully big area of inch and a half to localized 2 to 3+ inch rains during the 5 day period, and I just do not think that the coverage of that type of rainfall is going to be as good as this map would suggest. My main disagreement with the map would be those bigger 1.5 to even as much as 2.5 inch rains that they show in northwestern portion of Missouri and nearby areas. So again, consider this map overall as too wet. I think that in general it's coverage of 1+ inch rains, 1.5 inch rains. 2+ inch rains is quite a bit overdone over what is actually going to be occurring during the next 5 days. For the 6 to 7 day time frame, we are going to be drying things out in the western Corn Belt for the end of this week, and a big portion of the Corn Belt looking at limited rainfall for the start of next week as well. High temperatures yesterday, cooler conditions across most of the Corn Belt, although we did see some 90-degree heat still remaining in southern and southeastern areas, still some portion of Missouri at 95 plus. Note all of the 100+ degree readings that we're seeing yesterday in southern Oklahoma and in Texas, and that is certainly a sign of things to come for that area. Temperatures as of 5 o'clock this morning, a lot of the Corn Belt has cooled down, but you can see that a big portion of Nebraska and a big portion of the far southern Corn Belt as of 5 o'clock this morning still had temperatures above the 70-degree mark. Rainfall totals did see some good totals on a localized basis across portion of the eastern Corn Belt and into a portion of the Mid-South, but all of those good totals were very, very localized in nature. You did not have to go very far from those good totals to find places that had nothing at all. If you're looking at solid coverage of good rains over the last 24 hours, you definitely have to look into the Central Plains. You can see that on the radar estimated rainfall this morning that a big portion of western Nebraska has really picked up some nice rains. Again, you can see the very scattered nature of any localized good rains that we're seeing in the eastern Corn Belt and the Mid-South over the last 24 hours. Still considerable thunderstorm activity ongoing this morning across a good portion of the central and northern hard red winter wheat belt. As far as the forecast is concerned, again, a situation where some rain is going to be falling in some portion of the Corn Belt, probably on every day during the entire 10-day forecast, although clearly the best rainfall threat during that time frame is going to be during the 1 to 5 day time frame, all in association with an upper level low pressure system. You can see that low pressure system starting to get its act together by late tomorrow afternoon as it approaches the western Corn Belt and into the northern plains. By the time we get to 7 o'clock in the morning on Friday, the upper level low pressure system has really deepened by that time almost a closed low pressure system over northern portions of the Mississippi River Valley, and then the system exiting the region as we get to late in the day on Saturday, at that time centered over the Ohio Valley. So if you're looking at 5-day rainfall forecasts from the various models from 7 o'clock this morning through 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, all of the models in fairly good agreement that we are going to be seeing fairly general coverage of at least some half to 1 inch rainfall amounts across the Corn Belt during this period. Again, with this upper level low just spinning its way slowly eastward over the Corn Belt during the next 5 days, I really don't think that rainfall coverage is going to be an issue. I think that most everyone in the region should be seeing at least a ½ inch of rainfall, and I think that we're going to be seeing some areas getting as much as 1.25 inches, some localized areas as usual in the summertime seeing bigger totals than that. I think that any of those bigger totals, mainly in northwestern Iowa, a portion of Nebraska, and portion of Minnesota and into far western Wisconsin. But again, I want to emphasize this morning that I really do think that that QPF map this morning is overstating the type of rainfall amounts that we can see in especially the western Corn Belt, and in particular northwestern Missouri and nearby areas. I see the upcoming rainfall amount as quite decent across the Corn Belt, one capable of producing some localized very significant or even heavy totals, but for for the most part, some half to 1 1/4 inch rainfall amounts across the Corn Belt, which again would be considerably less than what that QPF map this morning would suggest. As far as your temperature forecast is concerned, for your Tuesday, still some warmer than normal temperatures in far southern portion of the Corn Belt, but you can see that the vast majority of the Corn Belt is looking at near to mostly below normal temperatures for your Tuesday, and the 2-week forecast is one that is completely void of any sort of big heat in the Corn Belt region. Probably one of the more chillier time frames to expect would be for around July 24th through the July 27th time frame. Looking at just your temperature anomalies for a part of that period on July 25th, you can see that at that time a big portion of the Corn Belt running pretty easily below normal on temperatures. Note though, at the same time, still big heat remaining in the forecast for southern portion of Oklahoma and into Texas. Look for portions of that area to see high temperatures above 105 degrees as early as tomorrow, and there'll be a lot more of that in that area for the remainder of the 2-week forecast as well. Looking at upper level features and rain chances for latter portions of the 6 to 10 day period and into the 11 to 15 day time frame, still monitoring an upper level low that the models are suggesting for middle portion of the 6 to 10 day period. You can see this on the European operational model, a low pressure system at that time located across the eastern portion of the Canadian prairies. That position right there would not be indicative of anything real big as far as rainfall is concerned in the 6 to 10 day period. And as I mentioned earlier, the models in general are in good agreement on below normal rainfall for a good portion of the Corn Belt for the 6 to 10 day time frame. But I'm certainly going to be keeping an eye on that upper level system, as it is a system like that the models tend to have a lot of difficulty in handling much more than a few days in advance. As we get towards the 11 to 15 day period, the beginning of that time frame, distinctly northwesterly flow aloft in the Corn Belt, any dome of high pressure in southwestern portion of the nation, clearly a weather pattern that would feature no big heat in the Corn Belt, clearly a weather pattern in which the rainfall chances would not be shut off completely. In a northwesterly flow like that, though, would be somewhat concerned that it may be a situation where temperatures would actually be too cool in the Corn Belt for a northwesterly flow aloft like that to be producing the type of rainfall that typically can in the summertime period. As we get in towards latter portion of the 11 to 15 day time frame, you can still see that a northwesterly flow aloft is still present in the Corn Belt, still a big ridge of high pressure in southwestern portion of the nation. The heights overall are higher in that period, indicative of a little bit warmer temperatures in that time frame. It may be very well a situation where the warmer temperatures, relatively speaking, that we are going to be seeing in the 11 to 15 day time frame is a reason why, with this northwesterly flow in the 11 to 15 day period, that the models are more hopeful for rainfall returning to the Corn Belt during that time frame versus what they show in the 6 to 10 day period. Internationally, for this morning over in Russia, I want to first mention that we did see some very nice rains over the last 24 hours for corn areas of central district of Russia. You can see some 1+ inch, 2+ inch, or even 3+ inch rainfall amounts there. As far as the forecast is concerned, still looking at strictly above normal rainfall across far eastern Europe and into the summer row crop areas of the former Soviet Union. Some of that rainfall going to be occurring during the 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and 11 to 15 day periods, though your best rains in Russia probably occurring during the 1 to 5 day time frame, near to above normal temperatures there for the 1 to 5 day period, then strictly above normal readings for the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day time frames. In Europe, still some very nice rains going to be falling in Poland during the next couple of days, and then that area will be drying out, as well as the rest of western portion of Europe for the remainder of the 2-week time frame. So still pretty dry weather pattern for the next 2 weeks for a lot of northern France, big portion of Germany, and into England, with temperatures there running strictly above normal for the next 2 weeks as well. Central portions of the Russian spring grain area still looking at pretty minimal rainfall amounts during the next 10 days. Any rains there mainly confined to far southwestern and far southeastern portions of the spring grain areas of the former Soviet Union. In China, I want to mention some rainfall totals there over the last 24 hours. Note some very big rains over the last 24 hours across a sizable portion of Heilongjiang, Jiang, corn and soybean areas. Also some very nice rains in extreme northwestern portions of the North China Plain, especially in the state of Hebei. The forecast for the next 2 weeks is unchanged versus what I presented yesterday. Heilongjiang still looking at nice rains during the next 2 weeks, though note that a lot of that rainfall is going to be occurring during the 1 to 5 day period when some additional heavy amounts of rainfall will be occurring there. For the rest of Manchuria and into the North China Plain, looking at strictly below normal rainfall for the next 2 weeks. Note that a large portion of the North China Plain going to be strictly seeing dry conditions for today through at least Sunday of the coming weekend. For the Canadian prairies, a very dry forecast for the next 10 days for southern and southwestern portions of Saskatchewan and into southern Alberta. Otherwise, the rest of the Canadian prairies looking at nice rains over the next 10 days. Quite a bit of warmth in the forecast in the 1 to 5 day period for the Canadian prairies. Then they will be cooling down again for the 6 to 10 day time frame. In Australia, not an especially wet forecast there. Any decent rains over the next couple of weeks going to be confined to wheat areas of Western Australia and into Victoria. Looking at the wheat areas of New South Wales to be especially dry during the next 2 weeks. And finishing things up for this morning, the Indian monsoon still looks to be one that will feature below normal rainfall for the next 2 weeks in southern growing areas, above normal rainfall in the north, with especially good totals in Rajasthan and into Madhya Pradesh. That's what I have for your Tuesday. Everyone have themselves a great day.